You are listening to Be Amplified, the podcast with Brie and Thais, episode 49. Hey Amplifiers, welcome to Be Amplified, the podcast. My name is Thais.
And I'm Brie Seeley. We are the co-founders of the Amplify Collective,
A movement aimed at radically disrupting how purpose-driven women connect and operate in the world.
because we believe it's not just what you do, but who you are that matters.
Each week, join us for messages and interviews that will leave you feeling amplified and ready to change the world.
Let's do this. Oh, good morning, Amplifiers. It's, as usual, your only two hosts of Be Amplified, the podcast, Brie Seeley and Thais Sky.
Hello.
Yet another silly, arbitrary introduction.
Yeah, I don't know why we have to keep introducing ourselves. At this point, I would hope that people would know who we are.
We must welcome any new listeners. So
That's true.
I feel like maybe it's just, a rite of passage that everyone must go through.
And everyone must understand how to pronounce my name. That's important. It is not Tiaz, it is not Thais, it is not Thais, it is not Thighs, it is not Ties, it's not any of those things. It's Thais. There is an accent on the I. The H is silent. Thais. Capiche, people? Capiche.
Also, my name is not Bri.
Okay, who says that though?
Oh, well, I get it a lot, surprisingly. Because the first time I got it, it was from a German woman, and so I gave her a pass. But then I was really native English speakers are calling me Bri. I don't. Anyway.
I mean, okay, I guess I could see it. But then you add an E and it becomes Brie. It becomes cheese. Brie. That's my attempt at French. I'm sorry if I offended any French people with that horrendous attempt. Okay, so we have Tommy Rosen on the podcast today.
Fabulous.
Tommy, Tommy is our third male guest. Third?
No. Fourth? Fifth?
Okay, so we don't do a lot of male guests because fuck men. Just kidding. We love men.
We love men.
We do love men. And Brie does not want to be at all associated with any ideas of fuck men because she is so avidly calling in her man. So.
Well, and I'm one of those new wave feminists that believe that we need.
There's no such thing. There's no such thing as new wave feminists. No such thing.
Well, the old wave feminists hated men back in the 60s. The whole feminism movement was about hating men.
All I'm saying is, first off, I think we're a little entitled to that after thousands of years of not being even allowed to vote. I think we're a little bit entitled to a little bit of fuck men. And it's not even men, it's the patriarchy. Although men created the patriarchy, but it's not like fuck men like individuals. At least that's not how I portrayed their anti-men stance.
I love where this conversation's going.
Anyway, what I'm saying is, we need men. We love men. Men are great. I don't know why we have to fucking say that every time we talk about feminism. I don't get it, but it's fine. For the fragile male ego, we must remind you that we do love you. I am a committed partneress to one and all of the things. Anyway, Tommy Rosen, he is going to be sharing his incredible insights as a meditation yoga teacher and author of an incredible book that I've been devouring on addiction. And addiction and the Alcoholics Anonymous process and yoga, and it's really beautiful. So stay tuned for that interview. But before we bring him on,
we have an announcement. So for those of you that are in Los Angeles, this is your friendly reminder. Come hang out with us in person. This is how Amplify got started, was gathering in person. And we have an amazing 2-part event coming up at Aloe Yoga in Beverly Hills. So you can find the information on our website. It's on June 20th. Our website is theamplifycollective.com. Go to the events tab and you will notice that, again, 2-part event. The first part, Miss Thais Sky will be teaching us all yoga from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. And that, my friends, is free. Unfortunately, we are limited to 35 spaces. So if you want to be in that room, you should get that now.
You probably want to be in that room.
You probably do. The second half of the event will be happening from 6 to 8, and that is in the Aloe Yoga store. There will be champagne. There will be discounted shopping. There will be amazing women having phenomenal conversations. And it's going to be a good night. And tickets for that are separate. They are $25 if you are not yet a member of our collective. And is that it, Thais? Did I miss anything?
No, I think you did that beautifully. It's the Aloe
Okay.
Yoga in Beverly Hills. It's a
Yes.
really beautiful store.
I walked by the other night and I was like, holy shit, we
Yeah.
get to have an event here?
Yeah, it's really a really beautiful space, and don't get tantalized too much by all the clothing because the
Well,
clothing is also amazing.
I will be shopping that night.
Yes, yes, yes. So, okay, are we ready now? Are we done? Are we
Um,
done with the announcements now?
are you feeling complete, Thais?
I feel complete in our
I
announcement
feel
portion of our
I
podcast.
I feel complete too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay, so let's talk about addiction.
Oh God, let's.
Uh,
So
so,
Thais and I always have like a little briefing before we get on these things, and we're like, "What are we going to talk about?" Blah blah blah, and she's like, "Let's talk about addiction," and I'm like, "Oh fucking hell!"
okay,
One, like, what are we going to talk about? And two, it's a heavy topic.
it is a heavy topic, and obviously, we need to make very clear at the beginning that Brie and I are not experts on addiction support. And if you are experiencing addiction to the point where you can no longer support yourself and you are feeling debilitated by your addiction, please get help. We have been victims of people who have not gotten help from their addiction, and it is absolutely debilitating on everyone in the family and everyone in the circle. And if you are one of those individuals who are just feeling torn, please, please, please get support. There's no shame in support. In fact, we should all have support. We should be born with a coach, a therapist, a healer, a chiropractor, and an acupuncturist,
Acupuncturist.
like on our team. Like the moment we're born, we should have all of those things all of the time. Can you imagine what type of society we would live in? Holy
uh,
shitballs. And it would be free and it would be subsidized by the government, so everyone would have access to it,
oh
not
my
just
God.
the privileged few, because the government understands the importance of having healthy citizens.
Did you take something before this episode? Because I think you're fucking delusional.
Oh, also add a nutritionist to that list. That's important because every
Oh,
body is different and we can't give the same prescription of nutrition to everybody. So,
you
a
mean we shouldn't
nutritionist.
all eat exactly the same amount of calories with the exactly same amount of distribution of meat and fats and all of the things?
No, no, we should not. So add that to the list.
What?
I actually think that this could be a really good thing. I think Trump, are you listening? Are you listening to our podcast?
Probably not.
Probably
Probably
not.
not.
He's
In
too
fact,
busy listening to Fox News.
I would guess that maybe our podcast has been shadow banned because, yeah, I would guess that that's happening. For those of you that don't know, shadow banning is a thing that Instagram has instituted if you use hashtag strategy, and it's unpleasant and painful.
Anyway, let's focus on addiction here,
Let's
peoples.
focus. That was a good digression.
Okay, so addiction is really it's rampant in our society. In fact, I feel like the majority of humans, at least in the Western world, I can't speak to all the world, but at least in the Western world, is addicted to something. And
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think the human condition is prime for addiction.
I agree. Beautiful. See, you already have so much things to say on addiction. Uh,
Marissa should pull that quote and put it on it. The human condition is prime for addiction. There you go. Mic drop.
Marissa is our beautiful Amplify assistant who listens to our podcast and pulls all of the quotes. We are making our life easier, Marissa. Okay, so humans are primed for addiction, and I believe that. And I believe that our world is hard, and we're not taught how to deal with the hardness of the world. We're not taught how to handle and navigate the internal and external turmoils of the world. And because all of it is so overwhelming, and because we are so not taught how to navigate all of the thoughts and all of the feelings and all of the things all of the time, it's very easy for us to want to numb out. And there are many ways in which we numb out.
Yeah, I do want to cover this quick to make sure, because obviously, like when Tice and I speak of addiction, we're not necessarily speaking of like using heroin on an
Yeah,
hourly basis,
yeah, yeah.
So I
Although
do you
that
want
is
to?
a prime example of addiction, but
Yeah.
there are more insidious addictions that I think affects more people than heroin. Addiction to TV, electronics, addiction to alcohol, obviously, and drugs, and prescription drugs is a big one that's rising in our country. Antidepressants and things like that. Addiction to Gosh, shopping to food to sports. I know I was addicted to food, and so I can definitely talk about my experience with that form of addiction. But then I was also addicted to shopping, um, and it's the same high. And so basically, like you're numb, you're so overwhelmed by the world that you want to numb out, and so you do these drugs, and it gives you this elusive high. It gives you this sense of ability of being able to navigate the world, like of putting power back, like giving yourself back power. And when you swipe that credit card and you just bought something, it's like that rush of dopamine and that rush of energy and that sense of invincibility until you get home and you look at all the things that you bought and you're like, fuck, I can't actually pay any of this off. And that's the consequence of addiction, right? But then you just uh, numb yourself even more so that you don't even have to then handle the responsibility and the consequences of addiction. And it becomes a pretty downward spiral. And not everyone goes to a place of losing their ability to navigate the world. That's why they call it functioning alcoholics. Or, the majority of us that are addicted to something, you wouldn't even know that we're addicted. It's not like it's so consuming. Oh, addiction to sex is a big one, Brie, and porn. Yeah. Uh, so it's not like most people would even know that you're addicted, but because you don't have a control over it. You really can't stop yourself from engaging in that activity.
So, for example, Bill Maher actually on, I guess it's in May, he had an episode where he compared checking your likes on Facebook and Instagram to smoking. And he
Hmm.
basically said that checking your likes is the new smoking. And so, and he, I mean, he even went as far to say Philip Morris just wanted your lungs and the App Store wants your soul, which is a little, anyways, but it's true. We replace our need to feel validated in the world with these external little markers to, like
Yeah.
how you said, increase the drugs in our brain and feel a certain way so that we can deny having to look at the actual feelings that are going on that's causing the behavior in the first place.
And all of this is deeply unconscious. It's not like, I mean, maybe on some level, you're consciously making a decision to drink alcohol to not feel your things. But for the most part, it's an unconscious decision of just having so much triggers and wounding and trauma and unmet needs that you just feel like you just take a glass of wine and it just feels really good, and you feel a little fuzzy, and the thoughts are a little quieter, and so the next night you have another glass because you really like that feeling. And then pretty soon you're drinking every night, and then pretty soon you needed to have more to give you that fuzzy feeling, so you drink 2 glasses and then 3 glasses, and pretty soon you have to consume more and more in order to get that same high. And so addiction can be really debilitating because it stops us from having the ability to be autonomous in our lives and to really be able to navigate and to say, I am making a conscious decision here.
Yeah. So for me, one of the ways that I used alcohol was, and for those of you that don't know, for health reasons, I have had like a glass of wine in the last 5 months.
And you
Um,
were never addicted, yeah?
no, I was never addicted, but I used alcohol. So I learned how to drink wine when I lived in Florence, Italy. And living in Florence was some of the best years that I've had it. I really had some amazing experiences there, and just the culture and the lightness and the connectedness of the experience there. I would then try to recreate that in my life, and two of the easiest ways actually to do that was my coffee habit and my alcohol habit. And granted, I would only have like maybe 3 glasses of wine a week. I was, again, not heavily drinking, but I was using the alcohol to recreate this feeling or this experience instead of actually going out into the world to have that feeling or that experience. I would sit at
Mhm.
home and try to recreate it alone. And I said for years I've known that I need to stop drinking because of health reasons. And I would say, it's one of my ways to continue holding on to Italy. And that was not a healthy way of experiencing that.
Yeah.
What if instead I had called up a friend and maybe we went for a cup of tea and I re-engaged that connection feeling that I had while I was in Italy.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Hmm. So, I
It
have,
can look a little different. That's kind of why I shared that.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing.
so let's talk about the addiction of external validation because I feel like this is a really big one in our society and our culture. Like I just mentioned with the Bill Maher thing. Um, it's so interesting because if you think back to, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we didn't have this stuff. We
Yeah.
didn't have this deep craving for this external validation
I
or
think we did. It just looked
well,
different.
it did look different.
Like, I think
And
we did. I mean, I
now it's
think,
just at our fingertips all the time, I think
yeah.
maybe is the only difference.
Well, it's just like the joke about like, oh, well, selfies is such a millennial thing. Yeah, right. Fucking Vincent Van Gogh painted himself. Like, if that's not a selfie, I don't know what is. You know what I mean? Like, we've been obsessed with how we look. We've been obsessed with validation and getting likes because we're social creatures.
Well,
It's
remember, it wasn't Da Vinci that started it. Wait, did you say Da Vinci?
I said Vincent Van Gogh.
Van Gogh. See, it was the Ninja Turtles that started it. It was Da Vinci and
Oh, is that it?
all of those ones that started it back
Leonardo.
in the Renaissance.
Mm, interesting.
Yep.
So yeah, so I think we've always had a need for external validation. I think um it comes from in many ways our deep biology of being very much wired to needing to understand other people's faces and expressions in order to know if we're safe or not.
Right.
um, and so, so on one level external validation is even okay and fine and whatever, it's good to know, like, if you're marketing and it's not landing on people, that's external feedback, that's input that will then inform your next, let's say, marketing thing. So on some level it's fine. I think the level that you're speaking of, Brie, is really when it gets to the point where you can't move without needing to know. You're obsessed because, like, you can't post something on social media and then not constantly check and look to see what people are saying. Like, it's like this pull within you that you can't even control to see what's going on.
Yeah.
And it is totally an addiction.
I mean, I feel like that's one of the like super prevalent ones
Well, and it makes sense.
right now.
There's science that shows that getting likes on social media does give us a hit of dopamine. It does make us feel good, and then we become addicted to that feel good, and we want to keep that high. We want to keep that up. And then, of course, I have my own theory that I won't get into in this episode about validation in terms of its connection to the worthiness wound and to the patriarchy and women's being taught to be constant looking through the male gaze and looking to other people to define her. And then, of course, we become obsessed with our looks. And of course, we then become obsessed with needing to know how we play out because that's what we've been taught by culture from a very early age. Um, but yeah, I definitely think that we have to start to look at all of the ways that we may be addicted in our lives and really remove the what's the word I'm looking for? The heaviness around the word addiction. Because I feel like no one wants to admit that they're addicted to something. No one wants to admit that they're addicted to sugar or caffeine. Because the minute you say that you're,
Sugar addiction's not a real thing,
yeah,
Thais. I mean, come on.
because the minute they admit to
Actually,
it,
it's funny that we just had that conversation with you saying what you said and me saying what we said because I feel like it should be flipped. Anyway.
yeah, I understand. Uh, okay, so addiction. What were we talking about? Oh, let's remove the stigma. Stigma. That's the word I was looking for. The stigma around addiction. I know that it's very scary for us to want to admit that we are addicted because then it means all these things. But I want to remove the stigma because the minute we do, and we can really be honest and take responsibility of our addiction, the more we can actually do something about it and change it. And so we have to use that word and claim it. One of the first steps of AA is I am an alcoholic. And when you can admit that you have a problem, you can do something about it. And if you're not admitting it, then how are you supposed to deal with it?
It is interesting how addicted we get to these things.
Yeah, one of the things that I do a lot of work with my one-on-one clients is the addiction that we have to our negative patterns and to our need to be in those patterns. Um, and the reward that we get for being in those patterns. You know, so much of our lives are actually not autonomous. In fact, the majority of our lives is run on autopilot based on our unconscious programming, and um, our because our brains are fucking lazy little shits and create
I like that. I've never heard that before.
yeah, our
Our
brains
brains
lazy.
are lazy. That's
Yeah, so
hilarious.
once they create a a neural pathway, like that's fucking it. Like it would just continue to run that same pathway unless you intentionally and consciously try to change it. And so we get stuck to these patterns, and then the thing is, we become addicted to them because then we don't have to take responsibility for them. And so we get addicted to the drama. We get addicted to the not having money or feeling sorry for ourselves or being a victim or um, blaming somebody else. And there's absolutely no judgment. We all fucking do it. And if we want to like step into our sovereignty, if we want to feel more in control of our lives, if we want to feel more free, we've got to look at these deeply entrenched patterns and how they're playing out, and more specifically, how we're actually addicted to feeling like shit. And
That's a
and
big one.
it is a big one, but most
'Cause
people don't even recognize that that's what's going on.
well, and that's like everyone, well, not everyone maybe, but I know a lot of people would be like, I would never choose to feel this way. Like I would never choose to be in this place.
Totally, and that's the
This
point, and
isn't
that's the
my
thing. Yes, I'm so glad you brought this up. One of the things that I, I'm a little bit feeling some challenges and tension around is the word choice. When I see these well-meaning people say like you get to choose fear or love, you get to choose, you have this choice. The thing is, like I said, our brains are lazy, where we have deep entrenched patterns and are all unconscious. And so we don't have a choice. We are actually not this choice person. It's very hard for us to feel like we have a choice because it is so deeply embedded in something that is unconscious. So on one level, we have all the choice. And on that one level, we really get to decide how we're going to be running our lives. And then on the very same level, we have no choice. And we are basically robots operating from the same, we have like 90,000 thoughts a day, and like 80 some percent of them are the same that we had yesterday. And the majority of our growth and belief system was embedded within us before the age of 10. So in that sense, we actually have very little choice. And so that's what I've been playing with, is like the juxtaposition between having all the choice in the world at any moment you can radically choose. I let go of my addiction to food. It took me fucking 10 years, but I did it. It happened. I've released my addictions, my trauma, and my healing, and my wounding, and the meaning in all sorts of ways. So yes, you have a choice. And I think it's really, really okay to first honor that we don't have a choice. And when we feel like we need to go to the bottle or watch TV or get the likes and we feel that tug, it feels like we don't have a choice. And in those moments, saying, I have a choice, I can choose something different, and then shaming yourself for not choosing something different is a way that we perpetuate the addiction. Because when you make yourself feel like shit, you're not going to feel empowered to make a different decision. You're going to want to numb that feeling of shit. And that's why we see in the movies and whatever people who are addicted, and then you make them feel like shit, and then they go to the bar and they drink more, because that's what we can't handle. We can't handle the shit.
So one of the things I've been doing lately is when I know that I'm in my patterns and I'm making the decisions that I don't want to be making, like the other morning. So one of my things is I moved my cell phone out to the kitchen. I don't sleep with the cell phone next to the bed anymore because I would wake up and check it first thing. So moved it out to the kitchen. And while I turn on music in the morning, for the most part, I don't check social media the other morning I was super tired and I did not want to get out of bed, but I had to get out of bed, and I'm like standing at the kitchen sink and I pick up my phone and I start scrolling through social media. And in the moment, I was like, this is so fascinating. Here I am feeling a little uncomfortable, a little extra tired this morning, little run down, whatever. And I fall back into this habit, into this pattern. And like as it was happening, I was like, this is so fascinating. This is what I'm doing. This is the choice I'm making right now. Like, you know, I wonder if I could choose something else in this moment. And then I was like, fuck it, I'm tired. And I just kept scrolling through social media.
I think that that's the
So
most beautiful thing in the world. And this is literally the bedrock of all of the work that women do with me is feeling okay in our imperfections. Because here's the thing, we in those moments, the goal is, I put parentheses, but I guess people can't see that I put parentheses. The goal is for you
quotation
not,
marks.
quotation marks, thank you. I said parentheses.
I only know because I can see it. We're on video, so I can see her moving her little fingers up and down, doing the air quotes. I can see it.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Focus. So we're taught that if the goal is to not drink, then anytime you drink, you are falling short of the goal, and then our judgments arise, and then our inadequacies arise, and then we trigger our wounds, and then we fall into a spiral of self-hate, and most specifically guilt and shame. And guilt and shame are almost like a protective barrier from actually feeling the underlying feelings that are perpetuating the pain to begin with. And it's very easy for us to feel guilt and shame instead of feeling the underlying emotions. I see guilt and shame like a condom. They protect you, and they kill some things in the process.
Oh my god. All
Marissa,
right.
you can also pull that as a quotable.
Marissa, please don't.
Okay. So what you did is so fucking beautiful because you were able to honor that in the moment you're a fucking imperfect human and this is where you're at and you're tired and you're just gonna fucking do this. But there wasn't a judgment that because you are doing this, you are bad and wrong and all those things. You're able to be present with all of the juxtapositioning feelings and ideologies that were percolating within you of like, I shouldn't, I don't want to, but I am, and here I am, and I'm just going to honor that. And what's amazing is the more that we can bring that energy into our addiction, that's when we break the cycle. And for me specifically, I was, there were many steps. This is not a one-step formula. Never repeat that this is a one-step formula, people. Do not say, well, Thais told me it's a one-step formula. It is not a one-step formula. Healing addiction takes time and effort. And one of the big aha moments that really released me from binge eating in a big way was when I was allowed myself to binge when I was in the binge. So here's the difference. I'm eating this chocolate chip cookie. I know I shouldn't be eating it. I don't want to be eating it. I have no control, but I'm eating it. I shouldn't be eating it. God, how could I eat this? I'm so out of control. I'm such a bad person. I thought this was over. I thought this was never going to happen again. God, I can't hate myself. I hate myself. I feel fat. I'm so ugly. I'm going to have to like not eat tomorrow so that I can compensate for this cookie. Fuck, I'm such a bad person. How could I let this happen to myself? Right? Those are the thoughts that I used to have. And then I started stepping into, I'm binging on a cookie and I'm going to fully let myself binge the fuck out of this cookie. And I don't want to be eating this cookie right now, but I feel like I have no control. And so while I'm here, I'm just going to devour and enjoy every taste of this cookie. And then once I'm done the cookie, I'm letting this experience go. And I'm not going to bring it tomorrow. And I'm not going to bring it to my next meal. And I'm not going to perpetuate the cycle tomorrow. And to me, that was everything. That changed
So
everything.
then did you not perpetuate the cycle tomorrow?
I didn't. Nope. The next day, I would just eat like normal. Like I refused. I made a commitment. I was not going to continue to bring this experience into the future. So I binged. And of course, the thoughts were there. Like, oh, I really shouldn't eat this because I ate that cookie yesterday. Nope. I'm going to eat this anyway. Like I just really committed. It's a new day. It's a new experience. And I'm going to eat like a normal person. And when I didn't hold that binge over my head all week, all month as what it meant to me, I started to be able to breathe a little more. And in that breath, slowly, as I stopped punishing myself for my natural limitations, I stopped needing to binge. And, there are many other processes before and after, but that one was such a big one. And so I love that you shared that experience, Brie. Thank you. God, you're divine for bringing that. It's a very small experience, people's, but it really highlights that, being softer and nicer to ourselves is the most healing modality that we can offer in any given moment to ourselves and to other people.
Yeah. And I say this, I share that I've been doing this now for at least 2 months where my phone's been in the kitchen for 2 months.
Yep.
And that's one of maybe like 3 mornings that I've done it. And so it's interesting, like how we can be so hard on ourselves for like, instead of looking at the 2.5 months where I haven't done this,
Yep.
we choose so much to focus and feel so much guilt and shame for the fact that like, this is like really 1% of the
Yep.
time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's been really in my life. I've had to navigate guilt and shame and judgments. And I'm so humbled and happy to report that I'm experiencing all of those things on a less and less basis. Less shoulds, less judgment about where I should be, what I should do. I mean, it still shows up. I am not enlightened. And it's not as pervasive and as consuming and as debilitating as it used to be. And it's so cool to see the results of doing this inner work for so long. And it's really cool. It's really, there is the light at the end of the tunnel. And for all of you listening, when I was deeply enmeshed in my addiction to food, I literally never believed that there would be a day where this disease would not consume my life. Like, I deeply believed that I was always going to count calories, and I was always going to be worrying about what I was going to eat my next meal and counting it and assessing my day and what I was eating the whole day and pre-scheduling and pre-mealing and pre-mealing and obsessing. I thought that was going to be my entire life, and it's not. And I can't remember the last time I calorie counted. And I can't remember the last time I judged myself over what I ate. And I've been the same weight for 4 years now. And I feel like I look great. And my body is not an all consuming obsession. And so I'm sharing that because there is hope. There really, really is. I didn't think there would be for me. And there was. And I'm not a magician. There's hope for all of us. We just have to keep doing the work and bringing Tommy on so he can shed light on more of addiction and yoga
yes,
and
he's the
meditation.
real expert.
Yeah, he is the real expert. Go to him, okay? Go to him. All right. Are we feeling complete, Brie? Do you want to bring on our guest?
I think so. I feel like there was one more thing, but I can't remember what it is. So, meh.
Nah, I'm sure it'll come up in some later episode.
If it's meant to, it will.
If it's meant to.
Or
right.
maybe it'll just live in that moment when I thought it and be gone forever. Who knows?
That's so sad. That is such a sad statement.
The majority of my thoughts die that way, unfortunately.
That's very sad.
I'm like a goldfish,
Oh.
I remember.
How is everyone knowing what type of fish they are? Like, Danielle Laporte knows that she's that rainbow fish, and you know that you're a goldfish. Like, what type of fish am I?
Goldfish because of the memory issue.
No.
I don't think I'm actually.
I think you should claim the goldfish status. I think that
goldfish are a little boring, and they just live in a teeny tiny bowl for the.
You should get that as your next tattoo.
Well, actually, I do kind of I do like not leaving my house. So maybe I am a goldfish. Am I a goldfish?
I think you're a goldfish. And you're gold, money, hello, wealth. There we go. Done.
I was just going to give myself a gold manicure, but I have to wait till I clean the house because it's counterintuitive to give yourself a manicure and then clean the house.
All of the reasons why Brie is a goldfish. Okay, so in the Facebook group, beamplified.community, I would love for you to share what type of fish you think I am. And,
actually,
we will take a poll.
Don't share it in the community. Put it on Twitter. Put it on Twitter. Let's all
do not put this in the public realm. I don't want. No. Put it in the group.
Or hashtag Be Amplified, at Be Amplified Co, and at I am Thais Sky.
What type of fish am I? And go. All right, let's bring Tommy on. This is getting ridiculous. Let's go. Right. And done.
Oh, amplifiers, do we have such a brilliant, brilliant guest on today?
Is Tommy the first guy that we have in our season 2?
I believe in season 2, yeah. We had a few in season 1, but...
Well, Tommy, you get to represent the whole man's world today.
Wow, that's a tremendous responsibility.
So let me introduce y'all to Tommy. Tommy Rosen is a yoga teacher and addiction recovery expert who has spent the last 2 decades immersed in recovery and wellness. He holds certifications in both Kundalini and Hatha yoga and has 25 years of continuous recovery from drug addiction. Tommy is one of the pioneers in the field of yoga and recovery, assisting others to holistically transcend addictions of all kinds. Tommy is the founder of the Recovery 2.0 global community, the Recovery 2.0 online conference series, and the Recovery 2.0 group coaching program. He leads Recovery 2.0 retreats and workshops internationally and presents regularly at yoga conferences and festivals. His first book, Recovery 2.0, Move Beyond Addiction and Upgrade Your Life, was published by Hay House in 2014. Tommy and his wife, yoga teacher Kia Miller, live in California where they teach yoga and grow organic vegetables in their backyard.
That is amazing. Welcome, Tommy.
Thank you so much. Incredible to be here. Grateful.
So we like to start off our podcast by asking the same question. So we'll ask it to you as well. What does it look like for you, Tommy, to live an amplified life?
An amplified life. Yes. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is morning spiritual practice. Without my morning spiritual practice, I will not be living an amplified life. That is for sure for me. So that's some yoga, meditation, chanting, prayer, followed by some incredible healthy food for my body and to keep my mind clear thinking and energized. And my relationships have to be in order. I'm not one of those people that can actually live with a lot of painful, discordant, challenging relationships. I have to be in communication with folks, and that means I have to work things out in real time. That keeps resentment at a low. Another really important part of having an amplified life is being free of resentment. And once you're free of resentment, meaning the past, then you get to be super present and you get to live a very creative, spontaneous life.
Let's dive into this topic of resentment. That sounds like a good place to start.
Sure.
So tell me a little bit about, okay, let's get personal. Let's just go in. Let's just do it. Let's talk about a moment in time, whether recently or in the further past, where resentment was a real thing for you, where you were carrying a lot of resentment and what that led you to and how you kind of moved past it.
You know what's interesting, when a person starts a sincere practice of meditation, in a way, it's kind of like turning on the lights in a home or in a room where you've been for your whole life. But you turn on the lights and all of a sudden you look around the room and you remark, oh my God, this room is total squalor. This room is filthy. It's such a mess. There's stuff everywhere. It's dirty. It's confusing. It's overwhelming. Oh my God. And what's happening there is you're having a moment of greater awareness of what has been there all the time. and until that moment, you may have been unconsciously, subconsciously, or maybe consciously very uncomfortable in your life. Things not going your way, a feeling that you're swimming upstream, hard to get on a winning streak. You always feel like you're on a losing streak. Like, my God, if I could only catch a break. And what goes along with that is this feeling of being a victim or at the mercy of forces beyond your control, that kind of thing. And you turn on those lights through the meditation practice, and all of a sudden you realize, wow, underneath the hood of my life, there has been a world of pain and challenge, of unresolved emotional residue, and it falls under the heading of resentment. Resentment feels like discomfort in the body. You physically can feel it. I know that for me, I feel a lot of resentment in the stomach area. So there's a real visceral, physical component to it. But really, resentment is just hanging on to something negative from the past, a sense that some expectation was not met, either by a person or an institution or some kind of situation. You had an expectation. The world did not meet your expectation. You perceive a sense of injustice about that, and you hang on to it. And so in my life personally, I can just say that while I was a happy-go-lucky kid and a positive person most of my life, until I not just got sober and put down drugs and alcohol, but later on when I started a meditation practice, was really the first time I started to realize the depth of my resentment and the judgment that goes along with it. So the whole first part of my life was replete with resentment towards my parents or teachers or society or religion or situations that had been painful to me, various individuals that I felt had wronged me in some way. And it's just no way to live an effective life. You cannot move forward in your life carrying that level of resentment with you.
This is amazing. And as you were sharing, your experience, something came up for me that I would love to dive a little bit deeper into. A lot of times meditation does shed a light on a lot of uncomfortable truths that we have created a lot of patterns like addiction to stop ourselves from feeling and expressing. So what do you say, Tommy, to people who are deeply uncomfortable with the slowing down process of meditation because they're still not quite ready to shed light on all that shit?
Yes, it's an incredible question. So, this, by the way, is relevant to everybody who starts a practice of any spiritual practice, which essentially leads. It's spiritual practice. What I mean is, your questioning up to that point has been in the outer world, and now you're going to begin an inquiry in the inner world. So you're going to start to look within yourself for the answers to some of these questions. That's a spiritual shift, a spiritual practice. So everybody who embraces a spiritual practice comes to the point where they realize this is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to be me. Wow. I would have thought I should be somewhere else, further along than where I am now, because as I start to look at my life, I feel this great sense of discomfort. Well, don't feel alone if you feel that way. That's a gateway that everybody has to go through. So what I say to you is this. Look at your life. Look at the effort you've put out, the tremendous effort you've put out to try to solve the riddle of your life, to try to be comfortable, to try to have better relationships, to try to bring abundance and love into your life, and to share those things with other people. Think of the unbelievable efforts you've gone to feel better from discomfort or some form of a lack of ease, either in the body or the mind, emotionally, spiritually, otherwise. You've gone to such incredible effort. No matter who you are, I know you've gone to such incredible effort. And my question to you would be this. If you're still looking in the outside world and you still haven't found the answer to that riddle, are you done yet? Have you had enough? Because I can tell you from personal experience, you can keep looking and you can turn every stone. You can look everywhere. But until you turn your gaze inward, you will not find the answer to the questions that you've been looking for your entire life. Yes, it's uncomfortable. And yet, there's no escape hatch. There's only the perception that somehow things are going well. And that perception comes because maybe you have a lot of money. And that perception comes because maybe you have drugs and alcohol and you're not running out of those things, so you can avoid yourself. But at some point, you come to the realization that the search in the outer world has not turned up the results that you've been looking for. And usually what happens is you reach a level of pain and suffering where you're now cornered, you're forced to change. Hopefully you're at that place now and you don't have to keep the search up. Or you're wise enough to take advice from someone who's been there. And you can say, I believe you. I'm done searching in the outside world. I need to ask myself some questions. I need to get down to the nitty gritty within me. And it's okay to have a teacher, a mentor, a therapist, a sponsor, a person help you with that quest. That's in fact necessary. But as long as you search outside to solve a problem that can only be found inside, you will continue to find difficulty, challenge, pain, and suffering in life. And at some point, hopefully you've had enough of it. And hopefully that moment is now.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something you said like a few questions ago. You talked about
an hour ago. No.
You talked about this idea of having like a quote unquote true meditation practice. So, kind of as you're talking about now, when you're starting this, in quest, it can be really easy to get on the train of, well, I need to meditate and I need to go to yoga. And so I need to do all these things without actually necessarily doing the work behind it. Like it's easy to show up at yoga class and, do yoga without having the real depth or connection with on that soul level. So if someone is kind of just getting into this and maybe they've like started meditation or started yoga, what would you say is the nuance that turns something from that, maybe not so true meditation or yoga practice into, as you mentioned, a true practice?
Yes. I think the word that I used was sincere. And what I mean by that is there's a moment that comes for you where, so I'll use the analogy of learning to play the piano. At first you come and you have a piano teacher, you go to the piano. And of course, at the beginning, the teacher teaches you, your posture, how you're supposed to sit at the piano, how to approach this instrument. And you begin to do scales because that's how we learn the piano. You have to first learn notes and then you learn scales and you learn the finger positions and you learn how to move your hands. And it's boring and it's meticulous. And you think to yourself, my God, what I really wanted to do was to play some incredible New Orleans boogie woogie. I want to play some incredible rock and roll music. I want to play some classical music. I want to play some jazz music. But here you are for days and weeks and months on end, and you're just playing scales. And it requires this very important asset that so few of us have. It requires discipline. And by discipline, I mean, the word is disciple, right? The root word of discipline is disciple, or to be a student. So you have to be in the mindset of being a student. You have to be dedicated to being a student. And you have to learn these skills. Now, there's another quality that goes along with discipline, which I argue, without this quality, nobody can be disciplined. Nobody can be truly disciplined without this quality. And that other quality is love. You have to love the possibility of what could happen. You have to love it so much that you're willing to go through the challenge and the boredom and the meticulous nature of doing scales. Because one day you come into your piano lesson and your teacher now says to you, okay, just play. Just play a song. And you can do it. And you've worked on scales, you've worked on a song, you're ready now to play a song, and you play it by heart. It's been committed to heart. Because you had discipline and you had love. That's called devotion. Discipline plus love, that's devotion. You're devoted because you fell in love before you even knew what was going to happen. You fell in love with the possibility of what could happen. So, think about any spiritual path, meditation. Think about anything you'd want to achieve in your life. What is the promise of meditation? The promise is clear thinking, unlocking your brain's potential, happiness, peace of mind, contentment, better health, better relationships. Like, if those are really the promises of meditation, is there anyone alive on the planet today that wouldn't like any of those things? So the challenge is, how do we do it long enough so that the initial challenge and the difficulty of learning to sit still, the pain in the body, developing the ability to focus the mind. We've been all over the place in this society. right? We're looking at our devices. We're having 3 conversations at once while we are answering emails. Just being focused is a skill that needs to be developed, and it's difficult. Now, once you get past that initial phase, you've exhibited the discipline and the love, the devotion to the possibility of what could happen. Benchmarks take place in your life. You start to notice, I seem to be responding better to life. Rather than reacting to everything, I seem to be responding better, more appropriately. I seem to be having better relationships. It feels better to be me. Now that's over time. Now, even after 20 years of meditating, you're still going to have a challenging day here and there. But the whole quality of your life is different. And you know by this point, a few of the important spiritual lessons have been made clear to you. Not because someone told you about them, but because you've experienced them directly. And one of those messages is that no emotion and no thought is permanent. So everything changes. Things rise, things fall. Things fall, things rise. So that you're never stuck, and you can develop the capacity to sit still and to be the eye of the hurricane. When everything else around you seems, and everybody around you seems like they're losing their shit, you can stay calm and focused, and you can be the person that people come to and say, hey, how are you doing that? How are you able to handle this so well? So that's what I would say about that question.
Wow, thank you. That's divine. Divine. So I'm a recovering emotional eater. That is how my journey started in the yoga and meditation world, was through my suffering of emotional eating. And your book is so beautiful in talking about your experience of addiction and recovery, and how you use the 12 steps and how you infuse that with yoga and meditation. To those of you listening, if you have any inkling of a desire to learn more about addiction, which you should, because everyone has an addiction to something, please check out Tommy's book. It's so beautifully written. So Tommy, let's talk a little bit about addiction and recovery. And what are your thoughts around, why we live in such a world where so many people are addicted, and they may not go to the extreme of being addicted to drugs to the point where their lives are out of control, but I feel like, and maybe that's my assumption, but I'm seeing that so many people are addicted, just like what you said, to our phones, addicted to being busy, addicted to television, sports. And I'm curious your thoughts. Why is that?
Yeah. So I'm taking a very broad perspective on addiction, obviously. I see it as any behavior that you continue to do, despite the fact that it brings a negative consequence into your life. Now, that could be anything, literally anything. I talk a lot about the big 6. These are the places that we mostly see people get tripped up in addiction. So drugs, alcohol, food addictions, as you referenced. So that could be anorexia or bulimia, another eating disorder, emotional eating, obesity, binging, this kind of thing. After the food addictions, you've got the people addictions, codependency, sex addiction, very painful, very challenging, very prevalent. Then after that, you've got the money addictions, gambling, shopping, being constantly in a state of debt, misuse of the energy that is money. And then you have technology, of course. So avoiding your life, avoiding the present moment through the use of technology. Any of these, technology is one interesting one where you can use it for positive or negative means. Money, you can use it positively or negative. Sex and relationships can be very positive or negative. I don't see too much positive about alcohol. That's just me. And I don't see too much positive about drugs, except the drugs that you have to take because of medical reasons or the necessity, some kind of imbalance that you're dealing with in your life that requires a pharmacological approach. Although there are many, many fewer cases than are treated that way in the world today. So really taking a broad perspective on addiction, you ask yourself and you look out in the world, like, why is there so much of it now? Well, on the one hand, it's celebrated. It's encouraged. It's advocated for. And we're bombarded by advertising and messaging that reinforces the idea that we need something from the outside that somehow is going to make us whole.
I need to interject because I just had a thought that I want to make sure that everyone listening can start to pick up on how this is so true. Look at any chick flick, any movie where it's about a guy and a boy, a girl and a boy in a relationship for the most part, right? And the girl's going through the breakup. What does she do? She goes home, she gets a pint of ice cream, and she binge watches TV. And it's so insidious. It's everywhere. This is the natural approach to dealing with a heartbreak. And the question then goes, how is that an acceptable form of grief? But we're seeing the media, even in this tiny little way, just in how to handle a heartbreak, eat food, watch TV, or sleep with a lot of other people. And that's a surefire way of getting rid of the heartbreak. Anyway, keep going, Tommy. I just felt like I had to say that.
Oh, absolutely. You're right on it. That's just one example that we've been given of how not to actually deal with grief, but how to not deal with grief. And so what we're being offered, typically, generally, what we're offered in society are opportunities to avoid ourself. Because we do that, we pay a great price. And the great price is to lose contact with our true self, to lose contact with the present moment, meaning our relationship with time becomes based in the past and the future. So, for example, we'll be relating to the past in such a way that our mind is either doing one of two things at any given moment. We're either trying to recreate pleasure or we're trying to avoid pain. That's all based upon past experience. I felt this pain here, so I don't want to feel that again. I'll do everything I can to avoid it. I felt this pleasure, so I want to recreate that pleasure, and by any means necessary, I'll recreate that. And so the mind bounces from one of those scenarios to the other, and you never get present. Presence means you sit still, and you experience and develop a relationship with what arises for you. Thoughts, emotions, sensations in the body. You create a relationship with the present moment where you don't have to react to anything. You're just sort of like a great observer of what actually is. Maybe you hear some sounds outside and you register, oh, those are birds singing in the tree outside. You feel a bit of pain in the lower right-hand side of your back. Oh, that's some pain in the lower right-hand side of my back. It's just an awareness of what is. Most people don't have that. After a while, you develop that ability. And what happens is you no longer desire to be on the constant treadmill of trying to recreate pleasure and avoid pain. Or you're in the future. Anxiety, worry, fear. Those are the future emotions. I am worried about what may or may not happen. I'm fearful about what may or may not happen. If the right things don't happen in the future, then I will not be able to be complete. Then I will not be able to be healthy. Then I will not be able to be whole. So we bounce around through this really diseased relationship with time, which is encouraged by our society. We have all the distractions available to us, more distractions now that have ever been on the planet Earth available to human beings. And they're seductive, and they are great for a very short-term fix. We become habituated to them, that is to say, addicted to them. And there it is. We're on the treadmill. We're not healthy. We're in a bit of pain and suffering because we're not developing a relationship with ourselves. We're convinced of the separation between us and everything else. And it's just a painful way to live. And so we need to treat it. And the way we treat it are the big six: drugs, alcohol, food, people, money, and technology. And if those aren't good enough, then we'll just create some drama or some other scenario where we can avoid ourselves just another day.
So I'm curious, you mentioned earlier, and you kind of brought it up a little bit again, is that like we're in these states and we're suffering. We're not like particularly happy about being disconnected, but we're not suffering enough to necessarily like do anything about it. And a lot of times for people, the suffering has to reach like critical mass in order to take action. But I'm curious to know, do you feel like suffering is a necessity in the equation, or is it possible for people to make that change into the inquest without that suffering reaching critical mass to then push them over the breaking point?
Right. So the main thing here that we want to talk about is consciousness. and it's not the difficult term that many people think it is. When I talk about consciousness, I'm just talking about what you're aware of. So what are you aware of? And how do you increase your perception? I could be aware of more things. I could understand more things. How do you do that? Well, there are a lot of practices, yoga, meditation, and other practices that help you with your level of consciousness. The company that you keep, the food that you eat, the environment that you hang out in. These are all things that are going to affect the level of your consciousness and the things that you're aware of. Now, any particular viewpoint, anything you're thinking, the place that you are sitting, literally sitting right this moment, you're only there doing what you're doing right this moment because of your consciousness. If your consciousness was different, you'd be doing something else by definition. But our consciousness, the three of us here in this interview, our consciousness has led us to have this discussion on this day. This is where we're at today. Our consciousness brings us to this. If we shift, we'll find ourselves somewhere else, if that makes some sense. Now, if you're in suffering and you're in pain, you're experiencing exactly what you're supposed to be experiencing at the level of consciousness that you've developed to this point. It's actually perfect for you. You may not like it. You may be uncomfortable and suffering, but you're experiencing what you're experiencing as a gift so that you can learn the lesson of what you're experiencing and grow from there to the next level of consciousness. So you'll be experiencing something else. I'll give you an example. This is a wonderful story told by one of my teachers, Anand Mehrotra in India. He tells this wonderful story of these children who they want to play soccer and they don't have a soccer ball. So they take all these pieces of fabric and clothing and shirts and they wrap it together into this tightly wound ball, and they tie it all together with all these bits and pieces of fabric, these bits and bobs, and they make a wonderful soccer ball and they kick it around and they're as happy as could be, and they're playing soccer and they'd be happy to play with that ball for the rest of their life. It's what they know. And then one day a visitor comes into their village and he's got a real soccer ball and he throws it onto the field. And a really interesting thing happens. Without thinking and without hesitation, those kids leave their makeshift ball and they start to play immediately with the real soccer ball. Because another level of awareness, another opportunity, an upgrade to what they were playing with before has been presented to them, and they took the upgrade. They automatically took the upgrade. They may not have even realized they were suffering with a makeshift ball. But another opportunity was presented. They deemed it as a better opportunity. And so they let go of the thing that had control of them before. Actually, this is how recovery from addiction works. Although people don't realize it. You have to be shown an upgrade to what your life was before, if it's going to stick. You have to know that what's coming down the pipe is going to be better than what you're used to. And then the irrelevance of the thing that you were holding on to before will present itself and you'll just let go of it naturally. If that makes sense.
I feel like this can be applied on a global scale. We have so many conversations about what's the right thing to do about immigration. What's the right thing to do about the wars in the Middle East? And when we have these conversations from this lower consciousness that we're all operating in right now, the answer seems unfeasible. Like we can't grasp the answer. But the minute the collective consciousness is lifted, the answer is right there. It's dumb that we didn't see it all this time. Yes. And then it's easier to implement and it's a no-brainer.
Yes.
Do you feel like it applies in the same way?
100% at every level, So yesterday here in California, we had another school shooting. Mm-hmm. Child died, teacher died, a bunch of people injured. And we've had enough of these things now that we can't just sort of sit back and be like, wow, where's this coming from? I can't believe it. And this is shocking. It's becoming less shocking because it's happening so much. And it's simply what happens from a consciousness that feels itself without any other option. if you do not feel like you have a future, if you do not feel like there's any way out, if you do not feel like someone of your skin color or your temperament or your personality has any shot in this world, then you'll do some pretty unbelievably desperate, horrible things to make up for the fact that that's how you feel. It's not right. It's a tragedy. It's not justified. But we must seek to understand this. Where does terrorism come from? It comes from people who feel like they have no other option. Does that mean that they're right to do what they're doing? No. It means that we can understand that at that level of consciousness, there's going to be some violence, some unbelievable violence. And we all have a part in it. We have all contributed to it. And until these people get recognized, until they feel like they're heard, until they are seen, and this may take 10 or 20 generations, this kind of thing will continue. Because violence basically comes from two kinds of people. People who are psychotic and unbalanced mentally, or people whose lives have pushed them to the point where they don't see any other choice. So it's not like, wow, where does this come from? We know where it comes from. But that level of consciousness has to be somehow improved, has to be transcended. And the only way I know that can happen is through surrender, through love, through compassion, through communication. I'm not saying that we are going to go and communicate with a person who has grown up and been groomed to be a violent person. It may be too late for that person. I'm not saying that that person is going to respond to love and kindness and compassion and all that. I don't have the answer in all these situations. But I do know that it has to do with consciousness. As you were saying, this applies at every level of society.
Yeah. It's a big topic, and sometimes we feel very small in these great conversations. But I think it's important that all of us remember that we all play a role, and that we all have a responsibility to be looking at our lives and to seeing where we're feeding the addiction, where we're separating ourselves from ourselves, where we are acting from a place of anger, because it's no different except in a bigger context. The same anger that resides within us resides within them. They're just taking it to the next level.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Tommy, thank you so much. I feel like we could be talking to you forever. Good thing we have the extended cut where we're going to be going even deeper. I joke that the extended cut is opportunities for our guests to take their bras off. And so if you want to take your bra off, you're welcome to do that.
For anyone that wants to join us over there, you can get into our community through the link beamplified.community. That's http beamplified.community. There is no com in there, just community.
There's no what, Brie?
No
what?
com. .com. So Tommy, before we wrap up quick, can you give our listeners an idea of maybe where to find you, or how to connect with your workings some more?
Yes.
Sure. Well, probably the best thing to do would be to Google Recovery 2.0. And then you'd be brought into a whole world of different websites and different offerings that we have. Very soon we'll be launching our online membership community, which will be a paid monthly membership where you can have access to tools and services and products that can make your life in recovery really something extraordinary. Our tagline is Life Beyond Addiction. So we like to help people to get there. And again, we're taking a very, very broad perspective on addiction, even addiction to your way of thinking, or addiction to thinking at all, or addiction to a belief pattern that no longer serves you. So come and check that out. But just Google Recovery 2.0 and you'll find our website and different things that you can get into.
And Tommy, we have a lot of people here in LA. I'm curious, do you do classes here in LA? Can people get access to you in person?
So we do workshops and different trainings here.
Okay.
Check the Recovery 2.0 website or the TommyRosen.com website for those events and trainings. And very soon I'll be offering more of a regular class practice that people can get into here in LA.
And what style of yoga do you teach? What I know we mentioned that you have certifications in Kundalini and Hatha. What is your teaching style?
Yeah, so yoga to me is in classical yoga, we talk about yoga ultimately leading to meditation. Yoga ultimately leading to the calming of the fluctuations of the mind.
What? Traditional yoga? What? It's not acro? I don't understand.
Hey now. My suspended yoga gets me to that place.
I love acro yoga. I love power yoga. I love Sivananda yoga. I love Hatha yoga. I love Vinyasa yoga. I love Kundalini yoga. When people ask me what I teach, I just tell them I teach yoga.
I love it.
So that's what I'm teaching. I pull from a lot of different traditions.
I love it. Amazing. All right. Well, stay tuned for our extended cut with Tommy. Thank you, Tommy, so much for being on our podcast. We loved having you and your expertise in recovery and addiction. Such an important conversation. And for those of you who want to learn more about our community, you are welcome to go to our website, theamplifycollective.com, and you can check us out on all the social medias at The Amplify Co. So go be amplified. That was supposed to be Bree's part, but I'll do Bree's part. It's fine. It's fine, Bree. I'll carry the weight of this relationship.